All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the I Help Pastors Get Jobs biweekly meetup. We believe pastors want to work hard, provide for their families, and build ministries of sustainability. And we're in chapters 3 and 5 of What Colors My Parachute. I feel like I was back in seminary because I'm like, I haven't read this many pages in 2 weeks in like almost 10 years. It's like 100 pages, but they were a good 100 pages. So I'm looking forward to diving into some of the themes and the topics at hand. And I don't know if you guys saw my note that I put out earlier this week. One of the pages talks about when people from the military are trying to get into the corporate world or the marketplace world, how hard it is for them because the military has very specific language and jargon and abbreviations, and just certain things mean certain things that just don't mean anything to us regular civilians. And I had this epiphany. Other folks have said this too, but I think it really drilled down. Like, we as ministry people have the same struggles, right? Because we're going from an environment where we want to serve and make disciples and make an impact and see folks reach for the gospel, to working in companies that have very different goals and very different objectives. Make money, get more customers, grow market share. So one of our community members made a really interesting point. She said, it's really hard when you're from ministry because you have this idea of calling, and like, I have to be called to this job and God has to direct me to do it. And I'm going to use very not flowery language, I wouldn't call it that, but like very like spiritual language about making a decision, when really the person interviewing you wants to know, hey, are you going to help us grow and make more money? Like, that's what we're looking for, because that's what our objective. We're in a business. We're in the for-profit space. So I think that was like the first kind of eye-opening thing for me, is like, how do we, like military folks, go from reframing our mindset of like, hey, I'm applying for this job and I'm interviewing, but I need to put myself in the position of the goals of this company might be different than my personal goals as a person. Even as a Christian, I don't know about all of you, but my overarching goal in life is not to amass as much wealth as possible. That's not, high on the priority list. But most companies, their goals are to grow and to get more clients and to grow their market share. So that was kind of my opening thought to kind of lead out with. But I want to hear from all of you. What were some of the things in the book that you thought were interesting and you want to spend more time chatting about? Or if you want to chat about that, we can do that too.
I think the premise of, starting with what you want versus just like what jobs are available, which has been I think part of the journey for me in this process, is trying to figure that out. Just trying to get to know myself and, knowing the work that I've done within the church and what I like to do and those skills, but just learning more about how that could translate somewhere else, and really trying to hone in on getting to know what I can bring to the table. I think that's been a cool thing in the book so far, and just doing some of those exercises to think through that a bit more.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is counterintuitive, isn't it? We oftentimes think you go out and find what jobs there are, but we also have to think, well, what kind of job am I wired to do? What would I enjoy doing? Let me start with that. It really helps. I think a lot of pastors I work with, they make the mistake of spreading themselves way too wide, thinking that they're going to apply to every sort of job under the sun. And then they call me in 2 months exhausted because they've applied to 1,000 jobs in the last 60 days. And it's like, well, you should probably figure out what you want to do first, and doing those reflections and exercises are really helpful. That's why we chose to do this book. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Stephen. Anybody else find that part interesting? Like, instead of starting with the job market, start with yourself and what you want to do.
Yeah, I found that sorry, I
Right.
found that interesting as well. And I think that's helped just direct and even personal filter jobs, of rather than maybe one step further of, like, my case of, I want to be a project coordinator, and then, okay, I'll just apply to everything in project coordination. But then that step further, like, okay, what of project coordination that I love to do? Like, what gets me excited and invigorated of that, to then look for job descriptions or look for skills in that way. The other thing I loved was right at the end of like the spot that you highlighted this past week. It says, focus on your overall leadership skills, ability to follow directions and set goals, and the hard work you're capable of handling. Like virtually all employers are seeking those traits in employees. And so taking that and expounding upon why I'm have great leadership skills, and not like, oh, I was a great leader because I had 45 volunteers. Like, but why do I feel like I'm a great leader? And expound upon those. And so yeah, I found it very insightful, especially the 2 weeks that I've had of just reading the front stuff of like, hey, it's just one employer. Like they declined, it's just one employer. There isn't another employer that's out there. And so I found it encouraging. And it's even to like get a support group or system, and don't do it alone.
Yeah.
So having people around you like this, or friends that have in church, not friends that are your friend because of your title. That's a difficult one, but friends that are just friends that you can connect with on a daily basis and share life with.
Yeah, definitely. When you have that frame of mind that says this job search will be a journey. It will have highs, it will have lows. And I need folks around me to support me. I often think that's like the secret sauce of this community, is that job searching is tough, but having a group of pastors that are here to encourage you along the way really does mean a lot. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that is a really good way to step back and look at it. It's just one job, it's just one employer. There's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs out there. Just because this one didn't work out doesn't mean the next one won't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. What else from these chapters struck you?
I'm gonna kind of piggyback on just that idea of zeroing in on something. The challenge I've had in that is zeroing in on something. Like I find myself reading different job description and be like, well, this isn't kind of what I had thought I zeroed in on, but like this sounds interesting. And so I find myself like going back and forth between like, what should I be looking at? Like this book has helped to bring a little bit of focus to that. But even still, I find myself like, do I really want to like box myself into this one kind of, job? So that's the challenge I'm having at the moment.
Yeah, well, once you get to the flower exercise, which is what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks, you're really going to feel boxed in. You're going to feel like you're, in a tiny box in, because it really gets granular. But that's actually, like I said, it's counterintuitive, but it kind of makes sense. Like I did the flower exercise, and one of the things that was surprising to myself was like, I always thought I wanted to work in like a very like large, well-known, somewhat progressive company. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'd rather work with people who are a little bit more laid back and like not high strung and not, stressful. Like, I just rather work in that environment. So I've actually, even in my own job search, has made like some choices of like not looking for the next cool app or the next startup as my first place, but instead looking for companies that maybe aren't so exciting, but they've been around for a while and they have some stability. And maybe that's my next job, as opposed to going to that 50-person company that has a loft downtown, right? Because that would be really cool maybe 10 years ago for me, but it's probably not really cool for me now when they're working, 70 hours a week. It's like little things like that. I think that really helps you think through where will my next job be? Because if there are truly hundreds of thousands of jobs out there, which there are, you can't apply to all those. You can only apply to a fraction. So which ones are I'm going to position myself in most strategically? But it certainly requires, to Stephen's point earlier, that self-inventory, that self-assessment, that inner work. And I think that's why this book is so profound, because a lot of other books out there are like, do this and do that and go on LinkedIn and make a resume. And this one's like, well, before you do any of that, look inward and figure out where do your skills and passions lie, and where can you bring and add value. So if you feel like I don't know what that is yet, I can't guarantee you by the end of this book you will, but at least by the end of this book, you'll have a better idea of where and what that is. So I hope that's encouraging.
Yeah, this may be an affirmation of the obvious, but this is such a really crucial concept of knowing yourself and then looking at the job through that lens and going, is this job going to give me energy or is it going to drain me? Because that goes to sustainability. You know, it's not only financial sustainability as part of this equation, but emotional, spiritual, all that. And when, you know, if you're in a situation where it's just bogging you down because you're not a good fit, yeah, like some of the factors you just described, Eric. And I mean, there's really quite a number of variables that do need to be thought about. So, you know, starting with who am I, and then doing the best you can. And the other piece of it, sometimes you can't really know for sure if it's a good fit or not until you get into it. But one of the things that I've seen also is an important factor in this is being realistic about where you're at in the journey. You know, when you're younger, maybe your only option is to flip hamburgers at Wendy's because you got nothing. You know, you just go do that, get a job, learn how to be a reliable employee, and you hate 99% of your time, but that might be what you need to do. But as you go through life, hopefully the ratio shifts from, you know, 90% of the time you don't enjoy doing, but it's making a paycheck, to, you know, maybe the best you're ever going to find is 70 to 80% of the time you're in your zone, you're doing stuff you love. And then you've got it, you know, there's the tyranny of stuff that has to be done that you just have to grind through and get it done because it's part of the job. But I think all of this, figuring this all out, goes back to that idea of really getting to understanding yourself and what gives you energy, what brings you joy, and you know, because that is going to lead to sustainability is what I'm trying to say. So
Such a good word, Steve. And I, you know, totally am with you, man. If you're at a job where 70% of what you're doing you enjoy, it's a pretty good gig. You know, truly. Every single job is going to have parts where you're like, this just stinks. I don't like doing this part of it, but it's just, it comes with the territory. If you want to get very theological, you could even go all the way back to, you know, Genesis 3. There's always going to be toil when it comes to work. Even our dream job will be a lot of work. One of the things on page 75 that I thought was kind of cool is because job searching is so exhausting and so demoralizing at times. One of the headings was keep it fun. And he actually suggested, like, make a drawing of what your ideal life would look like. And it was really profound because we talk a lot about your dream job, but we don't talk a lot about what's your dream life look like. And just to share something from my own story, I'm doing some informational interviews with other teams in my company. And I had one this past week with a woman named Diana, and she's on our sales team. And one of the things that is involved in my dream life is that every August, my family takes 3 weeks and we travel around and we visit, you know, our extended family. We get a cabin upstate New York. We just enjoy ourselves for 3 weeks, no work allowed. And that's like a really critical part of our year. And she told me in our informational interview at her job, it's really hard to take more than a week off at a time. So I was like, okay, like, so for me, it's like a non-starter. Like, I don't want to work at a job where I can't leave for 2 or 3 weeks without things falling apart. I think it's like knowing, like, and keeping it fun. Like, what is my dream life? Is it I want to work somewhere where, you know, there's a lot of flexibility and I can kind of work whenever I feel like it, or do I want to work somewhere where it's like, no, we work from 8 to 5, but we promise to never call you at 5:01. You know, it depends on how you're wired, right? Do I want to work somewhere where it's a lot of meetings, a lot of interaction, and a lot of collaboration, or do I want to work in an environment where 80% of my workday is head down work, creating, ideating, building by myself? Like, these are the sort of things I think we all should be asking ourselves when we're thinking about what kind of job we want, because one mistake that I made in my career is thinking that I could be on Zoom meetings 30 hours a week and it wouldn't catch up to me. And it has caught up to me. Like, and I'm like, this is my next job needs to have, you know, 2 hours a day. That's good enough. Any more than that, it's too many Zoom meetings, because I like having head down time to write and create and think and build and, you know, make things better. I don't want to spend all day every day on Zoom meetings. I like this Zoom meeting, of course. Don't mishear me. But my other ones, they all suck. So, anyways, what about you guys? How are you trying to keep it fun at this point in your journey?
Yeah. The fun thing for me is I'm all about like atmosphere and experience. So when I was close to getting a job, I was IKEA has this great feature that you can scan a room and delete stuff and then build a room essentially. So I got to like just have fun and build in my own personal office without, as we all know, like, oh, well, no, you have to keep that desk or the bookshelf because so and so gave it, or we bought it 50 years ago and it's still good, so why give it away? Type deals. And so I've never been able to design my own office like this is where I want it to go, or this is where I want stuff. So that was for me a lot of fun, invigorating, just to be able to put stuff together and kind of create my own atmosphere. Something else was I totally resonate with what you said, Eric, of going through all of the logistical stuff of like, do I want an 8 to 5 or, and I think it's easy for us as pastors. I definitely felt this of like, well, man, I just want a job that like I work and I clock off and you don't, not like you don't care, but you're not going to contact me at 5 a.m. Saturday morning saying, hey, can you come do this? And I feel like that's been a hard thing for me because, for 10 years I'm wired of, yep, I have to serve. Yep, I have to serve. Yes, I need to do this, rather than learning like, man, that's not what people that I'm serving do. They say no. And so I should be able to say no. But yeah, I mean, fun for me is just being able to have just even a remote job at times that I'm able to, I told my wife it'd be a lot of fun to go upstate Maine, Vermont, and book a cabin for 2 weeks and we work in the snow in a cabin remote and be able to do stuff outside. And so, yeah, I mean, those are things that for me, keep me in the process of journey. Like I want to be able to get to that type things.
I love that. Thanks for sharing, Taylor. That's really cool. Anyone else? How are you keeping your job search fun?
I haven't done this yet, but I was a bit inspired by your post the other day about you just connected with that person. I love conversations. I love talking to people about their jobs, and so I think I'm going to make it a point over the next couple of weeks to just when I see a job that's interesting, see if I can talk to somebody about it, whether it's somebody in the department or connected. Like I know that's not always going to work, but I just love talking to people about work and their jobs. I was like, oh, that's a great way to job search and to maybe get on the top of a pile, like your resume. So I'm gonna try that. It sounds fun to me.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of fun. You can like gamify it, and just to like give you guys a quick tip for LinkedIn, that job was called the Learning and Development Manager at Plaid. So all you need to do is type that job into LinkedIn, press post. There's different options. I press post. So this wasn't the person I spoke to, Sarah Trout, but the person I spoke to was, where is he? Maybe he's not going to be on here now because it was a little bit ago. It was a guy named Josh, and it was the same exact thing as this. Like, my team is hiring, if you're interested, let me know. Right there's the hiring manager, Sharon Arad. So you could literally just go to Sarah Trout's profile and find her email address. And what I would recommend you do is do a quick, I never heard Salt before, so I'm kind of going off the cuff. So let's just scroll down her experience. So here you go. This is something kind of interesting. The personal brander, self-employed, a career consultancy. Well, look at that. Perfect. Hey, my name is Eric Hogue. I am really interested in the role of learning development at Plaid. I'm also a career changer. I'm coming from a church and ministry background. I saw that you're the personal brander. I have this company. I'd love to hear more about that as well about Plaid. Do you have 15 minutes to hop on a call? That's it. Like, she's gonna say yes because this is also her side hustle, it looks like. So there you go. It's also a soccer coach, if that's interesting to you. There's just like ways to do it, but I would not recommend you do it, Corey, when you began like, oh, actually, it's a whole different job. That's why I didn't see this before. I would not recommend Corey saying, hi, my name's, Corey, I'm interested in this job. Can you refer me? Because it's like, I don't know who you are. So no. But if you say, hi, I saw this on your LinkedIn. It looks pretty cool. Can we talk about that? You get 15 minutes of her time. She realizes that you're a nice guy. She gives you a social referral link. She gets a bonus if you get hired. And yeah, man, like if you just made a commitment to do that once a day, Monday through Friday, you'd have a job in 4 weeks,
I was surprised that the lady I was talking to yesterday, she was the vice president of HR, and I was like, she asked if I had questions, and I was like, honestly, I'm curious, like, what does HR actually look like from your perspective? So I was like, well, I'll ask her. The worst she could say is like, well, that's not what we're talking about. So I asked, and she was more than happy to go into it. She's like, if you see any roles that look interesting to you, even if they're not here, like, let me know. I'd be happy to talk to you. It's like, I think people are really willing to share their experiences if you ask in the right way.
People want to talk about themselves. That's human nature, isn't it? So finding creative ways to on-ramp that is huge. And we as pastors, I mean, we're pros at it, so take advantage, find people to connect with, and you never know where it will lead. What else in these chapters struck you?
Well, I'll say that doing the picture, the vision board thing was kind of fun. Just to, again, not start with what jobs are available, but how do I picture that ideal life? And so doing that was pretty cool. And something I've been doing that's kind of trying to keep it fun is, November seems to be this month where there's lots of challenges that are out there. Like it's the National Novel Writing Month. So it's like, can you write 50,000 words in a month? There's all these like, I've seen, can you do 3,000 push-ups in a month? All these like crazy things that kind of grind out. And I just had this thought, like, what if I just took the 30 days of November just to really try to work on myself, like a little bit each day, try to learn more about myself, try to learn more about the jobs I'm looking at. And that kind of has been a fun thing. Like, hey, I'm just going to try to carve out 30 minutes or more, an hour a day, just to revisit some of these exercises and do that. So that's what I'm doing for the rest of this month. And that's been just kind of a fun way to reinvigorate the job search.
That's so cool, man. I love that 30-day challenge. So what are some of the things that you're doing to like improve yourself? Are you writing 50,000 words or doing 3,000 push-ups?
No, I'm not doing those. Well, I mean, just trying to be, up with this book, like that's one simple thing, right? Is just reading through that. I'm trying to spend more time on LinkedIn and just, looking at jobs that come up, trying to network a little bit more, trying to be more active in posting and interacting with people. Another thing I've done is I just created a Google Doc where when I come across interesting jobs on like Indeed, I just copy the job description. I'm just like reading over those things, just trying to familiarize myself with like, oh, this is what the description is, so they're looking for, and just capturing different titles of jobs, which is kind of interesting. Is like, oh, employee engagement and empowerment. Like, I never heard of that before. What does that mean? And just get kind of putting those things down on paper, just trying to learn more about them. So it's kind of the things have been fun.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. It's an opportunity for you to really hone in those key words and what people are looking for, because you're right. I mean, employee engagement and empowerment, that sounds like, take out the word employee and put congregant. I mean, that sounds like our job, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Pretty sure we know how to do that.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of remessaging it that makes sense to the person hearing it. I'm like really like charts because it's easier to read. So the chart on page 86, there was kind of 3 things that piqued me. The first one was, and this happens a lot with people I work with, they think their resume is their ticket to the next job. And I say, no, your resume is your ticket to your interview. All right. It's like, you don't need to put everything you've done since, to Steve's point earlier, flipping burgers at Wendy's. You need to put what makes sense to get you in the door. So be mindful of that. The other one, to your point, Corey, is your interview is not you just talking about your assets and what you bring to the table. It's a conversation. It's getting to know the person, human to human connection. Because ultimately, the one I love at the end, not the end, towards the end, what you talk about in an interview is good, but then also what you're trying to find out is, do they want me? If you walk in with that attitude for an interview, you're going to be on your heels. If you're walking with the attitude that says, do I want them? Like, do I actually want to work here? Because just as much as you're interviewing them, they're interviewing you. It's a two-way street. So I find a lot of pastors I know, they're like, I just feel lucky they got a call back. And you should feel lucky. Don't mishear me there, but at the same time, you're bringing, assets as well. So it's an exchange. It's, oldest exchange in the book. I'm giving you my talent for money, right? So let's treat it that way. I thought that was a really helpful graph. So anyone else find any of those points, the traditional approach versus the parachute approach on page 85 to 86, kind of interesting?
Yeah, I did. It kind of challenged me to look at the parachute approach rather than traditional. Because I think when you're transitioning roles at a church and jobs at a church, it's the traditional approach. You send your resume in, you do all of this, you hopefully get, your resume viewed, and then you can do the interview. Whereas like the parachute is more about finding your skills, finding everything and honing in. And so, yeah, I mean, it was very invigorating for me, like, and just kind of taking a step back and reassessing. And so, another thing I found was actually right before that on page 76 or 79, the 3 types of career change, because that really helped. And even just now helped, for me to say, okay, well, if I want to be, to shift into project management, I need to find something that's nonprofit then, because I'm used to nonprofit, rather than applying everywhere for project management, even if it's a project coordinator that's entry level. That's a big career change of going to a for-profit company rather than a nonprofit that's used to hustling off of grants and things like that. And so, which is really close to, church tithes and stuff. And so, for me, I think that helped just narrow down roles and jobs. And so, and that's how I mentioned it before, both Steve and Steven jumped on. That's how I found this role. I just searched nonprofit project management and went that way rather than just kind of overarching.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's true. That chart is also really helpful because it shows like you're here, you want to jump to here, but maybe there's a bridge in between the two that can help you get there. So I worked in churches, I want to be a project manager. That bridge could be, I'm gonna be a project manager in a not-for-profit. Because then that you do that for a year, and then it's a softer landing to a for-profit role. Yeah, I mean, that's huge. That alone is worth the price of the book. Because a lot of us try to leapfrog, way too fast. And one of the things I learned from my friend and mentor Steve Pike over there is you have to walk people through a journey, even in Christianity and our faith, right? You can't have someone walk in the door on a Sunday and then baptize them that afternoon and have them preach the following week, right? That's not how it works. You walk with them through a journey, and even in our job search, it's a journey where there's baby steps to get to where we want to be. So yeah, that is really huge, man. Figuring that out is awesome. It's the job I want. This is the industry more likely to hire me based on my background. I love that. Cool. We've got about 15 minutes or so left. Anything else on your guys' minds about the book that you want to chat about? And I have one last thing that I think is kind of interesting that I think is worth spending a little bit of time on about the book, but I want to hear from anyone else in the room. All right, the last thing I was going to share before we wrapped it up on page 91.9, how to find a job. Knocking on the door of any employer, office, or manufacturing plant. And it tells a story in the book of a person who walked into a company at 11 a.m., asked if they were hiring, and the person that whose job that he took had just quit an hour earlier. And I mean, that's very serendipitous. I know this doesn't happen every single day, but there is something to be said. He talks about smaller employers, 25 people or less. That human-to-human contact does go a long way. There's a story of Bob Goff. I don't know if you guys know his books, but he talks about how his law school would not accept him. So he camped out outside of the dean's office for like 3 days until they're finally like, okay, let this guy in. He's not going to leave. And it sounds like crazy, but like even that, like to go knock on a small business's front door and say, "Hi, my name is Eric Hope. I'm wondering, here's my resume. I was wondering if you're hiring." I mean, that's bold, but why not? Like, why not try to like search around your town and like see are there any companies I know that, you know, they're small. There are a few people, 2 dozen people or so, and just see what's out there. Because here's the thing is I think that could create a networking opportunity because those 25 people might know someone else who's, oh, we're not hiring, but these guys down the block are, walk on over there and knock on their door. Very old school. I kind of had to chuckle at it because we're so used to the digital world, but there is a lot of power in, you know, the good old fashioned, hey, I'm here. Why do you think Jehovah's Witnesses still do it every Saturday? Because it still works. So that just was one of the things I wanted to share. So maybe that could be one of your challenges, Stephen, for the month of November. I'm going to knock on one door, just one person's door, and be like, hey, I know you don't know me, but your company looks really cool. Are you guys hiring? So that'd be pretty bold. So anything else before we wrap it up? Oh, we never even talked about the flower exercise. Anybody get started on that? The flower exercise, that was part of this reading as well.
I
Yeah,
got the
haven't-
work.
oh,
No, go ahead.
no, go for it.
I got the work. I got the book on my Kindle, so I was like, well, I'll get the workbook so that I can at least have something physical. So I've dove into it a little bit with the workbook.
Nice, very cool.
I was gonna say I haven't started it yet. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if you have or anyone has any advice on what to do when you jump into it or any perspective to have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also working through it myself, and I think the biggest thing is just, you know, like a lot of these assessments, I find that we as humans are not the most self-aware of ourselves. And will either like lean towards like this sounds selfish, therefore I'm not going to say it, or this sounds stupid, therefore I'm not going to say it. But don't do that to yourself. Like, don't self-eliminate yourself. Like for me, like the on page 117, there's this chart is like, who would you want to work with, right? What kind of people? And it's realistic people, R, investigative people, I, artistic people, A, social people for S, enterprising people was E, or C was conventional people. And like I wanted to be around social people, but that was also like I also want to be around artistic people too. I was like, but I don't want to put that because I feel like that makes my job search so small because, you know, you can always ask your waiter what art degree she has, right? Or your waitress. And I was like, I don't want to limit my job searches by wanting a place that's artistic, but at the same time, that's what I want. I want to be around creative people. So I think that's my biggest piece of advice going into it is like, don't just be true to yourself, be honest with yourself. What do I actually truly want? Not what my, you know, pastor said I should do, or my, you know, parents said I should do, or my wife thinks I should do, but what do I actually want to do? That can go a long way. Any other advice for the pedal exercise for those of us as we navigate into it in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think something that's helpful that Craig Rochelle talked about in one of his leadership podcasts is like, I don't think he says power statements, but it's like a framing statement of like, he says every morning to just remind himself of stuff. So like that's stuff that you can start on. For me, like when I was applying to churches, like, so I'm someone that values the church over a department. And so like, so that's obviously job related, but it's also who I am. I'm you know, I've always said I value my family and interest over my job, let's say. And so those are statements that you can kind of start already using even in your church role to kind of frame who you are, like who you care about or what you want to do. I didn't look up the research or like try to include a link, but I can try to find it's the technical term is blanking, but he talks about it of just you know, saying, hey, I'm someone that makes hard decisions and I'm confident, or, you know, things like that help I really like how he said to remove job out of all of it, because I think that's a big one for me. I feel like a lot of us, that being a pastor is wrapped in our identity more than I think we realized. And getting the word pastor out of our head and out of our mind is a lot harder than we think. And so taking this exercise, I haven't done it, but just even it's invigorating to say, okay, who am I? Like, I'm passionate about sports. I love sports. I love coffee. That's who I am. Like, no matter what job I go into, that's what I'm going to love. So like continue to go in that direction rather than, well, I like to build teams, so I'm a team builder. And it's like, well, that's still job related. And so
Yeah, man, it's so good. It's so good. I think what you said sparked something with me, Taylor, because when we, and I think all of us have done this, when we're like looking for a church job, I mean, the chips are not stacked in our favor at all. Right? Because like most folks I know who are looking for a church job are like, I have to move to a place where I don't have any family or friends. I have to work in an environment that I may or may not like. I'm at the mercy of a big board. The working hours might be just what they are, and I don't have any say in how to change them. Like, there's a lot of those things. So I do think to Taylor's word, and it's a good word, is it's empowering to say, you know what, like I'm gonna build what I know, like an environment that I know I'll thrive in. And I'm gonna do that by my own self-awareness and understanding. And like even going as far as like, I don't think anybody here wants to move, but even going as far as saying, I want to live somewhere where, you know, we get more snow or less snow, or we're this far away from family, like even figuring out those things. This school district, right? That gets much more complicated, of course, as you do that, but you know, why not? Like, why not dream big about what it is you want to do? Because in my experience, I worked at 2 churches as staff. The first church I went to was a town I never even heard of. And I had no single soul. I was like, this is where the work is. This is where I have to live now. I'm living in this town called Washington, New Jersey that I never even knew existed, and to build my life here. And I'm like, can't believe I did that. That was like not awesome. You know, I'd rather like live where I want to live, and be around who I want to be around. So just some food for thought. But yeah, I'm looking forward to our meetup in 2 weeks, talking about what we came up with and maybe what surprised us about our answers. I think maybe like kind of fun. All right. Anything else before I stop recording? Cool.